Hi everyone, my name is Ashley Jonas and I'm a student at UNL. I'm taking Intro to Cultural Anthropology for my anthropology minor, and today we're going to analyze an ethnography written by Kelli Ann Costa about Irish heritage and tourism. Okay, so an ethnography is a nonfiction narrative written by an anthropologist highlighting what they discovered while conducting fieldwork. I'm going to tell you today about my ethnography, Coach Fella's Heritage and Tourism in Ireland. I have worked on this as part of the World Ethnography Project, where we were assigned to read books from around the world to learn about other cultures. I chose Ireland because I just studied abroad in Spain last semester, and I had the chance to take a weekend trip to Ireland, and while I was there, I was really interested in the people there, but it also intrigued me to learn more about the whole tourism industry. Okay, so here's a picture of the book, Coach Fella's. And like I said, it was written by Kelli Ann Costa, and this is her second ethnography. She grew up in New England and studied archaeology, heritage, and tourism. She taught at a college in New Hampshire and received a PhD in 1998. She conducted 3 years of fieldwork in Ireland for this book, and she did it on a Fulbright fellowship. Her book was published by Left Coast Press in 2009, and I was lucky enough to get this book as part of the Interlibrary Loan Program, but it usually runs at $50 for paperback. Okay, so I thought we'd do an in-depth summary of this ethnography. The book goes through advanced fundamentals of tourism in Ireland. Here's a quick overview of what tourism is like in Ireland. Ireland has a reputation of being a mystical and enchanted country. It had many immigrants in the past because of the potato famine. Urban centers such as Dublin have become increasingly modern. Travelers think this is a shame because they expect a pristine and rural Ireland. Tourists tend to have certain expectations for their destination, especially Ireland, before they arrive, and the fulfillment of these expectations is what guides their satisfaction with their trip. In addition, there are various types of travelers, but many fail to experience a true Ireland. And instead, they vouch for souvenir shops and ignoring opportunities to experience authentic Irish culture. Oftentimes, this results in the unmerited mistreatment of their tour guide or coach fellas, who they see as merely an Irish stereotype. Now that we have a brief overview, here's our research question. How do the perspectives of different roles people play in Irish tourism intersect with concepts of anthropology? Okay, now I want to analyze the various topics of cultural anthropology that are covered in Costa's ethnography. These include concepts of Irish globalization, language and culture, ethnicity and nationalism, kinship, family and marriage, class status, and even includes aspects of environmental anthropology. And additionally, it sums up the intersectionality of tourism in Ireland, including the roles of tourists and their coach drivers. Like I mentioned earlier, tourists mostly seek an authentic travel experience while abroad. The irony here lies in the fact that most tourists do not necessarily discover what you and I would consider authenticity. What is shown to tourists is really a performance made to look genuine. In reality, no one would be interested in going behind the curtain because it's not catered to tourist expectations, suggesting that tourists only want superficial, contrived experiences. These border zones are where the visited leave their normal lives to interact with the tourists and sell their souvenirs. Consumption of culture is permitted here. While tourists arrive in their new and unfamiliar location, they tend to adopt a tourist gaze, which is the visual consumption of places and people that are not familiar. The tourist gaze is the same culprit that suspends people's normal judgments of what is real or authentic. Thus, when they watch a performance or act of cultural stereotype, like an Irish jig, they tend to believe it is ancient and authentic. Visitors have also made a habit of idealizing Ireland prior to arriving there. They want the perfect trip, traveling around the rural, mystical, and romantic country. This is understandable. I mean, who wants rain and traffic jams? But their evaluation of Ireland and all it has to offer is subject to these perfect expectations being met. Few people actually land in the country without looking up pictures on the internet prior to arrival. This conditional satisfaction has proven to be difficult for bus drivers, but is so important because it's the attitudes they take back to their families at home, and that's what matters. Among these expectations are a look of stereotypes that the tourists want to see in real life. It's the reason that they chose Ireland. For example, I went to Ireland, went to a pub, ordered a Guinness, and basked in the friendliness of Irish culture and musical tunes. The stereotypes of Irish culture and ethnicity are highly perpetuated in Ireland, but these stereotypes go further than the pubs. Coach drivers serve as the primary interface between a group of tourists and real-life Ireland. In this position, they have a lot of influence on North Americans' perceptions of Irish people. They want the drivers to be professional, but also naughty entertainers with colorful Irish language. And many of these coach fellas embrace putting on the Irish as it becomes easier to diffuse tough situations. Now that we mention language, it plays an important role in tourism. So many Americans travel to Ireland anticipating the Irish accent. Some even learn some tours in Irish, which isn't really necessary to get yourself around, but maybe it's just for fun. Often people are not prepared for the difficulty of the accent and are too embarrassed to ask for help to understand what the driver said or to repeat it. This leads to miscommunication, which is detrimental when it comes to these schedule times. While I was on a coach tour in Ireland, there were a pair of Spaniards that didn't understand very much English in the first place. They constantly made us late for departures. The typical behavior of tourists does show that they are in a state of liminality and they don't act like they would at home. They are dependent on their driver guide, and when they act disrespectfully, they can hide under their status as a stereotypical tourist. While at their destination, tourists have a list of places they must go and see. Once they are there, they feel the urge to take a picture and buy souvenirs that primarily serve as proof of their own presence in a popular area. We will talk more about this later. They take on extensive roles as teacher, leader, organizer, safety engineer, soothsayer, and historian even. They have this job because they want to share Ireland with foreigners, but the problem is that many tourists aren't interested. Once they step on the bus, they begin their nap or put in their headphones and stop listening. Essentially, the drivers are talking to the windshield. They describe the landscape, historical tales, announce bathroom breaks, but passengers rarely listen. When they miss these narratives, tourists don't know where they are, why, or what is important. This being said, it seems like tourists severely undervalue the role their driver plays in them having a successful trip. There might be a cultural boundary here. In North America, bus drivers do not have a highly ranked profession. Their job requires manual labor and repetition, making them part of a lower class. This idea follows Americans into completely different cultures. It becomes harmful when the travelers treat a coach fella as inferior to them or expect too much. The driver guide is the only visible leader. Thus, he is blamed for things out of control like rough ferry rides, lack of all Irish knowledge, and traffic delays. And let's put the icing on the cake. Coach drivers are paid solely by tips. This is common in European tourism, but there are issues. Coach drivers may go out of their way to improve the tour only to be shortchanged by the people he is catered to. One driver said he was given a 70 € tip for a 7-day tour, and some tourists think a guide should be grateful for receiving any tip at all. No matter how hard coach fellows try to engage their audience, there is not much you can do to help tourists already unsatisfied with their experience. They are likely to post a bad rating on TripAdvisor. They cannot meet everyone's expectations, even by taking up contrasting roles between professional, commanding driver, and personal, funny Irishman. Many tourists would rather simply go to Ireland than be in Ireland. They consume souvenirs to take home as memories and to show others the number of places they've gone. Tourists pick up souvenirs to have a tangible memento to bring back home in hopes of remembering the experience they've had long after they've returned to their boring lives. Once they are home, they recall memories of their state of liminality and begin to fit their experiences into categories and make sense of it all, relying on stereotypes they found as valid. All tourists are prone to sharing their trip abroad once they return home. This can be done through social media, photos, stories, or souvenirs. This is done in part to evoke admiration from someone who wasn't able to go on the trip. Travelers may display their experience in many ways, like placing souvenirs in a visible place of importance. Participating in tourism is a type of cultural capital in various ways. Travelers experience an increased access to more life chances with knowledge of foreign art, tradition, and culture. This is viewed as privileged information about the other and can increase one's social status. Souvenirs can also serve as cultural capital, whether it is truly authentic or mass-produced, because everyone from home believes it is genuinely authentic. Now I wanted to share a part of the ethnography that sums up the relations between tourists and their Irish guides. This passage can be found on page 142. In an interview with a driver guide in the spring of 2006, mention was made again of the total disinterest in Ireland, despite his best efforts to make the visit of his charges interesting. He had even gone so far as to add stops and visits, now outlined in their schedules, to make them happy, with little result. His comment follows closely those of other driver guides that many tourists are most interested in going to rather than being in Ireland, and in their collection of trinkets and souvenirs, and the number of places they had been for the photo album. Tourism as consumption. Overall, in this age of globalization, tourism is becoming easier and easier. It is one of the most powerful industries in the world. Middle-class people are benefiting from the increasing accessibility of travel and transportation. Everyone claims they want to experience cultural immersion when they go abroad, but in reality, they try their best to stay isolated in their own familiar bubbles. They require Western amenities and only speak English, unaware of how inauthentic their experience can be. However, many people don't realize that tourism is consumed in terms of prior knowledge, expectations, fantasies, and mythologies generated in the tourist origin culture, rather than by the cultural offerings of the destination. I hope you enjoyed my analysis of Coach Fellas, Heritage and Tourism in Ireland, and that you learned something. Thank you for listening.